Donald Trump is deliberately making it all too easy for Hillary Clinton to play the vagina card. That's what Donald Trump appears bound and determined to do, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how else to explain or sum up these two stories brought to our attention by Red State. The first, from Kimberly Ross, sets the stage. Now, this election cycle could not be more perfect for Hillary and her vagina card. On one side, you have a female who is dangerously close to her challenger's poll numbers, and well, Trump's not a challenger, it's a rival. Hillary is not the de jure incumbent, she's only the de facto. But at any rate, you have a female who is dangerously close to her rival's poll numbers in a year that should be hers. On the other side, you have an incompetent, insulting con man whose obnoxious behavior dominates the headlines, as it's designed to do for his ego. With Hillary Clinton in the mix, we knew that, well, gender, that's a nice neutral term, I guess, would play a major role in the 2016 election, but adding Trump in as her opponent brings the gender issue to the forefront in a way that would not have happened otherwise. Donald Trump's past and present interactions with and comments about women are such that they should play right into the hands of the Clinton campaign. His behavior is actually a dream come true for them, and Trump seems not to notice all that much, or to care, or maybe he's doing it to help his good friend, Mrs. Clinton. He gleefully goes along with spewing mockery and perhaps believes he is scoring points with voters who might view it as tugging tough instead of, just being an asshole. The gap between a man who routinely comments on the appearance of women and a woman who has been publicly humiliated by her husband's many infidelities is wide. His many Trump-esque infidelities is wide. Hillary and her team know this and are using the vagina card to keep that wedge of difference open. Which brings us to Alicia Machado, the former Miss Universe beauty queen from about 20 years ago. Since Hillary mentioned her name, that was the source of it, Trump has been on a rampage not to right a wrong, but because righting a wrong would require him to apologize, and Trump doesn't apologize for anything because he's never wrong, right? But to prove that his statements back then were right, that they don't need to be corrected. His ego, once again, folks, coming to the rescue of any chance that he might actually get to the White House. That he called a beauty queen Miss Piggy and Miss Housekeeping bothers me much less than his general unfitness for the presidency. But it is easier and probably more effective for Mrs. Clinton to point out that he called a woman fat. Female, verbal shorthand, in other words. Female voters of the liberal and undecided, and that's the key, persuasions are provoked by the tale and will remember that as they head to the polls. In other words, Donald Trump is legitimizing feminazism. As we saw in his tweet storm early Friday morning, Donald Trump himself promotes Hillary's point perfectly. Like, here's what he tweeted on, early, like 2:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, on Friday morning. Quote, "Did crooked Hillary help disgusting, check out sex tape and past, Alicia Machado become a U.S. citizen so she could use her in the debate? Why would Machado need to be a U.S. citizen for Mrs. Clinton to use her in the debate?" I don't get that part. Um, Now, Mrs. Clinton and the rest of us who got a rest overnight that night did notice Mrs. Clinton tweeted out the following: "This is unhinged, even for Trump. What kind of man stays up all night, sitting on his gold-plated toilet, to smear a woman with lies and conspiracy theories?" Now, do I agree with Mrs. Clinton? I don't know. I don't know much about Alicia Machado, but I do know Mrs. Clinton brought her up in the debate, and that was part of the baiting of Trump to bring out the worst in him, which is very easy to do because his ego is by far his biggest liability and vulnerability. And it worked. Now, with a Cruz or a Rubio or a Bush, or any actual Republican, imagine if it had been Carly Fiorina. That would have eliminated the vagina card completely, would it not? But with any actual Republican as her opponent, Hillary's chances to play that vagina card would have been minimal at best. In fact, using it would have appeared quite desperate. And as, of course, Mrs. Clinton should be desperate. Mrs. Clinton should be getting blown out by double digits. Instead, Trumplicans nominated Donald Trump. I mean, after all, despite their many flaws, Cruz, Rubio, Bush, Walker, Perry, and any of the actual Republicans in the Republican race are not insufferable jerks toward members of the opposite sex. However, Donald Trump is, and that has worked and will continue to work in Mrs. Clinton's favor. Besides looking desperate, the use of the vagina card has been exhausted. But again, this is an entirely unique, that's another nice neutral term, unique election cycle. The normally worn-out card suddenly springs to life when played against Donald Trump and all his serious insecurities. You know, the small fingers. Hillary Clinton has done something incredible this election year. She has revitalized the use of the vagina card by baiting her opponent with one of the groups he believes he knows best: women. What a conceit. Well, you know that old Mickey Goldmill line from Rocky 2, or is it Rocky 1 or Rocky 2? I can't remember. One or the other. Women weaken legs. And campaigns, it would appear. Yes, it's a cheap ploy, but most of the vagina card is just that. Instead of noticing the tactic, in other words, actually being a political professional, backing away and remaining patient as the past is dredged up, because wouldn't he? I mean, look who he's running against. He's running against La Clinta Nostra, the dirtiest players in the game. Wouldn't you think Trump would expect this? Know that it's coming, recognize that it's coming, and just take it in stride. Let it roll off your back. Keep your focus on what is supposed to, well, whatever the hell it is. Whatever is supposed to be his message this particular week. You wouldn't think it. I mean, this is mumbledy-peg. This is elementary, ladies and gentlemen. And yet Trump can't do it. His ego won't permit it. Instead of just chilling, instead of rolling, hey, he's ripping off Richard Nixon's term about the silent majority. Why didn't he And why doesn't he rip off Ronald Reagan's line from the one debate with Jimmy Carter 36 years ago and say, well, there you go again? There's a reason why that line is so memorable. Because it shut up, in this case, Jimmy Carter, and that whole line of attack about how Ronald Reagan was an extremist and Ronald Reagan was a mad nuclear bomber and he's going to get us all killed and blah, blah. That cut it off at the knees. Why couldn't Trump have done that? Why couldn't Trump have turned to Mrs. Clinton and said, Hillary, as a great Republican president once said, well, there you go again. Treat it like, hey, this, and cast it as the desperation that it should be, instead of a no-brainer election-winning tactic. No, he couldn't do that. Reflex, the ego, kicked in and never kicks out. And Trump took the bait, as he always will. By the way, you think that Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Ali Khamenei aren't paying attention? They thought Barack Obama was easy and effortless to manipulate. They may have found the one human being on the planet who would exceed those lows. Although he believes he is beating Hillary at her own game, which he's not, he is actually enabling her to perform better than ever. And Mrs. Clinton could not be happier. And so, consequently, Trump is threatening to go full nasty on the Clintons for the rest of the campaign. Letting his ego take over, engaging in irrelevancies that nobody cared about 20 years ago, and now it's 20 years later. Instead of talking about, well, whatever his issues are this week, they're in a constant state of fractal chaos and flux. Instead of taking aim at Mrs. Clinton's actual vulnerabilities, instead of talking about something that is the slightest bit novel or new, Trump's ego takes over and he's just in full Trumper tantrum mode. Susan Wright brought to our attention yesterday at Red State. Now, somebody earlier suggested a shock collar for Donald Trump as a possible way to train him to withhold his natural impulses to be a nasty, classless, arrogant jerk. And I'm beginning to understand how more drastic measures may be warranted in order to get him to buckle down and prepare for the next debate, or to at least give some measure of presidential appearance, or just, hell, being a normal adult human being, for that matter. But the circle of clingers and yes-men and boot-licking, ass-kissing sycophants he keeps at his side certainly couldn't keep him on message for the first debate, and he fell apart like Walter Donovan drinking from the wrong grail. He was unprepared and made to look foolish by the absolutely worst candidate the Democrats may have ever nominated. And now, in frustration, Trump is threatening to do that one thing that he's being told by his advisors and everyone else not to do: be nasty. Be an asshole. Be himself. And if you think that the Clintons and La Clinton Nostra is reacting in any way other than, yes, yes, then you don't know politics and you haven't been paying attention. She's nasty, Trump told the New York Times in an interview published Friday night. But I can be nastier than she can ever be. So that's the contest Trump wants to win. Not the White House, but who can be the bigger dick. Or, in this case, cunt. Hillary Clinton was married to the single greatest abuser of women in the history of politics, Trump told the New York Times. Hillary was an enabler, and she attacked the women who Bill Clinton mistreated afterwards. I think it's a serious problem for them, and it's something that I'm considering talking about more in the near future. And La Clinton Nostra is saying, bring it on! To say nothing of Trump's own vulnerabilities on this sort of thing. I mean, come on. Pot kettle black, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, now all of those things that Trump said were absolutely true. But those of us on the right who were old enough to have been politically aware through the 1990s, through the Clinton detour, have for years, decades, proudly denounced the entire Clinton clan for the moral wrongs of Bill Clinton and his detestable shrew of a wife. This is nothing new for us. I mean, yeah, that's why we in None of the Above and Never Trump don't really talk about it that much, because it's such common knowledge. I mean, do you talk about beating a dead horse? It was beating a dead horse back when Clinton was being impeached over the Monica Lewinsky affair. 18 years later? I mean, talk about something new. Talk about something original. Take on Mrs. Clinton's actual vulnerabilities. Talk about whatever the hell your issues are this week or today. They're in a constant state of fractal chaos and flux anyway. But don't talk about something that nobody cares, or didn't, something that nobody cared about 20 years ago, and they're not likely to care more about it now. This is all Trump's ego. It's stupid, it's self-destructive, but this is why he is the only candidate that Hillary Clinton could defeat. Because that ego makes him supremely vulnerable. It is a huge liability for him. That's why he himself is a huge liability as a Republican nominee. That's why we didn't want him. One reason among many. And Trumplicans insisted. And this is what we're left with. This is where we are now. Where those of us in Never Trump knew we would end up if this man was nominated. Now, even if you removed the mountains of scandal under which Hillary Clinton is buried, the horror stories told of her wicked and hateful nature should be enough to disqualify her from a job that requires diplomacy and the ability to maintain control of your emotions in stressful situations. And yet, who did we nominate? Somebody who is even less capable of diplomacy and self-control. I mean, do you think that Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Ali Khamenei, etc., Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, just pick an American, Kim Jong-un, pick an American enemy. You think they don't recognize how easy, how effortless Trump would be to manipulate? I mean, they thought they hit the mother lode with Barack Obama. And now to follow that up with Donald Trump? Holy crap! Now, that being said, Trump. Slap a wig and a burlap sack on Donald Trump, and he's Hillary's doppelganger in every sense. Trump's camp has been madly spinning that for him not to bring up Bill Clinton's affairs during the first debate was a win for him. And now Trump threatening to go after Bill, go after the potential and quite likely first gentleman I mean, isn't that functionally conceding that he lost the debate? I mean, if it was a good thing that he didn't bring up Bill Clinton's affairs, which, by the way, it was a good thing, and now, I mean, it's like he said, I lost the debate, and doing something that would have cost me to lose even worse is something I should have brought up, so now I'm going to bring it up now to guarantee that I lose the second and third debates even worse and the election along with it. It's almost like Donald Trump doesn't want to be president. It's almost like he's tanking the election, isn't it? Referring to Eric Trump's comments earlier in the week that Donald Trump showed courage in not bringing up the issue at the debate, Clinton spokesman, Brian Fallon tweeted Friday night, "Assume Eric Trump now believes he's a coward," referring to his father. Oh boy. We didn't want Trump, and this is one of the big reasons why, Trumplicans. I don't know what else you need to see. Now, this is the danger of bringing up anything outside of policy for Trump, which is why Mrs. Clinton brought it up. She knew what she was doing. She knew that she was poking a stick into a beehive, because this is exactly the reaction she wanted. I mean, and by the way, not that Trump knows policy. He doesn't. I mean, Trump is attempting to turn the entire process into an episode for TMZ or the National Enquirer. But it's too easy for the seasoned pros with the Clinton machine to twist it into a win for Hillary. And then there's that little matter, which I thought was supposed to be a bad thing, Trumplicans and cuck-servatives out there. Then there's that little matter of the fact that Trump has a long history of his own fidelity issues, pot, kettle, black. He is an unrepentant adulterer with 3 marriages and a penchant for misogyny. Hypocrisy, thy name is Trump. Asked if he ever cheated on his wives, Trump responded, "No, I never discuss it. I never discuss it. It was never a problem." What does that mean? Because they consented to divorce him? Well, apparently the New York Times reported yesterday that the reason why Donald Trump hasn't paid taxes in 18 years is because back in the 90s, during whichever one of his serial bankruptcies it was, he posted a taxable loss of almost $1 billion. And so he's just been carrying that forward ever since. That's why he doesn't, if that's true, if what the New York Times is saying is true, which is always a big if, but if it's true, well, that's why Trump hasn't been willing to release his tax returns, because it would come out, that's one of the reasons anyway, or would be one of the reasons, because he doesn't want anybody to know that, well, he hasn't paid taxes for 18 years. Because he's an incompetent businessman, because he's been carrying forward that $1 billion loss ever since. And when asked specifically about his affair with Marla Maples, Trump responded, "I don't talk about it. I wasn't president of the United States." Why does that matter? Why does that matter? If you're not POTUS, then that justifies being a serial adulterer, fornicator. That's the logic of what he's saying there. I don't talk about it. Well, you're going to be talking about it now, pal. Because you brought it up. You let yourself get provoked. You let your ego. Well, he's never controlled his ego in his entire life, but oh boy. When you think of the fact that he was impeached, the country was in turmoil, absolute turmoil. No, not really. The country was entertained. I remember I remember Clinton's impeachment. I remember the whole damn thing. The country was not in turmoil. The country had the best reality television shows, reality television series. I mean, the Clintons were reality TV before it was called reality TV. And remember, Clinton got more popular when he got impeached. Monica Gate, all his scandals made him more popular, not less. This is why it's so stupid to try to make this, which happened 20 years ago, an issue in 2016. People didn't care about it then. They should have, but they didn't. And what makes anybody believe that anybody's going to care more about it now than they did then when they didn't? God almighty, Trumplicans. He lied with Monica Lewinsky and paid a massive penalty. Well, you mean his law, getting disbarred, losing his license to practice law? Come on, I just freed him up, gave him a lot more time to diddle interns, for heaven's sake. What massive he gets disbarred? Why does he care? He didn't need that law license anymore. What was he going to do? Go back to Little Rock and hang out his shingle? He's a former president. Look what they did do. The Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton Foundation. All the man had to do to make $1 million is to go out and give a damn speech. He goes somewhere and shoots the crap with, for an hour, and he gets $1 million. Why would he need what massive penalty? Jesus. I mean, I don't know if he's this stupid or if he's just this bad at trying to convince us that he's anti-Clinton. I mean, come on. The Clintons and Donald Trump are friends. They were friends before all this. They're friends now. They're just not being public about it. And they will be friends afterwards. I guarantee you that Donald Trump will be on the platform at the Capitol when Mrs. Clinton is sworn in on January 20th. Count on it. This is all a gigantic kabuki dance. This is all phony baloney, plastic banana, and apparently it falls to me to point that out when at any other time it would have been Rush Limbaugh saying this. This is all a show. This is all an act. They are cut from the same cloth. They are two sides of the same coin. They are identical in every way that matters. Not talking about it doesn't make it go away. Speaking of Trump's infidelities, it doesn't make it less true. It doesn't make Trump any better than Bill Clinton simply because he wasn't president. It still shows a deceitful, selfish nature. Clinton camp can take all of these things and the heat generated by Trump's continued attacks on former Miss Universe Alicia Machado, and they will use it as an effective tool against Trump in the next debate and the debate after that straight into November. In other words, even if you presume that Donald Trump is not trying to tank this election, he is his own, and Trumplicans, he is your worst enemy. Sabotage anyone?